All right, to this now, Chief Electoral Officer Sy Mamabolo says a distinction should be drawn between the IEC and Parliament in constructing the regulatory framework for political financing. Mamabolo says the mandate for the IEC to deliver elections must not be diluted by enforcement procedures. Now, he was speaking at the symposium in Durban in KwaZulu-Natal under the theme Sustaining Multi-Party Democracy through Enhancing Political Funding Regulation in South Africa. Let's get the very latest now from our politics reporter, Natasha Phiri. Natasha, a very good afternoon to you. Political funding, at least the transparency thereof, has always been a contentious issue. Just give us a sense then of just the hotbed topics under the discussion there at the symposium.
Well, thank you so much, Unathi. I think there's so many, hot potatoes to actually address here at the conference. We saw a presentation by the Human Sciences Research Council. The DCEO of the IEC's Political Party Funding Unit revealed that over this 4-year period where the Political Party Funding Act had been, since it had been implemented, over 8 billion rand was actually donated or administered to various political parties. Some may say actually it is quite a bit little. 25 million rand was given to the Multi-Party Democracy Fund. And then, this is actually quite concerning. If such a little amount is actually given to this Multi-Party Democracy Fund, does it mean that there's a lack of faith or trust in our country's political party or democracy? We also saw there the Human Sciences Research Council also revealing that South Africans have little faith in, our democratic process and various political parties. But Unathi, we have been seeing various interesting presentations. Let's just take this conversation to Dr. Miguel Otaola from Mexico. And of course, he's a member of the Internal Council of Electoral Integrity Project. We'll start off with him, then go to Dr. Miguel. Thank you so much for joining us at SABC News and welcome to South Africa. I think first and foremost, just from a global perspective, why is political party funding so important?
Hi, thank you. Political party funding, it's very important because, especially public funding, political parties and candidates need resources to compete, to campaign, and to win an election, right? And they have to get that fund from somewhere. If it's public funding, like the multi-party democracy funding, or, comes from the public, that's good because that reduces the intentions of getting funding from elsewhere because those other sources can be problematic. And in essence, democracy needs money to run. So you have to support democracy, and one way to do it is through funding.
And let's just compare the international best practices between Mexico and South Africa.
Well, I'm really happy that South Africa, it's been 4 years, but now there's a momentum going on and hence this symposium. So I'm really glad that South Africa is reflecting about, strengths and weaknesses of this type of funding, how to improve oversight, how to improve enforcement. I think the IEC is doing a good job, but we also have to think that it's not only up to them. It's also about Parliament, because it's there, the political parties that need to, reach an agreement to improve the frameworks and improve the, sanctions, if that's the case, yeah.
Dr. Miguel, I know you've got a presentation inside, so let me just let you go, and of course we'll catch up with you later on.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Unathi, let's just take this conversation to the Human Sciences Research Council. Dr. Mkhunu, so many interesting questions, posed to you inside. Your research also reveals that there's little public trust in democracy, in political parties, and I think it's evident through the numbers that we've seen. You have 8 billion rand that's been administrated to various political parties that are represented in the National Assembly, and 25 million rand to the Multi-Party Democracy Fund.
Yeah. Yes, so the trust issue really dates back to about 10-15 years now, and it is affecting other facets of our democracy, including, of course, the Multi-Party Democracy Fund. But I think the key here is that we need to remember that the Act, for example, is only 4 years old, and as people get more information and interact with the process of donating and allocating resources to political parties, they are likely to be more trusting of the process. So it is still early days, but the trust issue is definitely worrying, and it is something that we need to address because course, it ends up having a spillover onto other processes as well.
I mean, earlier on, we saw various political parties were somewhat enraged that, these various families like the Oppenheimers who actually donate to political parties were not available or rather refused to actually take part in this research?
So when it comes to participation of research, it's not necessarily a matter of the Oppenheimers or any other rich family that didn't participate. We also had participation issues with political parties themselves. So I think it's something that we obviously constantly have to deal with, but that does not necessarily mean that the research mustn't go ahead. Initiatives such as this one and the symposium we're having will obviously shed light onto the work that we've been doing, and will also encourage participants, private sector, public sector, political parties, private donors, to avail themselves to the HSRC or any other research institution that's collecting data.
What also stood out for you from some of the presentations inside?
Yes, so there's quite a bit. I like the point that Mr. George Mahlangu made regarding the fact that this is a public instrument. It's not necessarily about the Electoral Commission.
Yes.
I also like the point that the IEC CEO made regarding that ultimately legislation influences or dictates how this process unfolds and how it will work. So we do also, I think there is a need to make sure that we all are aware and we are well informed about how these processes work. And on our end, as a research institution, our focus has obviously been to engage with the research. We've been doing this research for about 3 years now. So we're looking forward to continue to do more research, and we'll be able to track the progress that's been made over the years, particularly in terms of willingness to donate, willingness to participate. So all the figures you spoke about earlier, we'll be able to track them over time as to whether or not they are changing, improving, and what can we do to change them should we need to.
Lastly, Dr. Mkhunu, another overriding element that actually came out was the issue of should the IEC be given more powers to police the Political Party Funding Act. And now the IEC is caught between a rock and a hard place. So their mandate is to actually deliver elections. Theirs is more technical. And now the public is asking them to also handle this other component. But you look at electoral management bodies across the country and across other, abroad, I beg your pardon, the globe, where you have two entities. And now the IEC says that, listen, it'd be conflicting for them because you need to administer elections on this hand. On the other hand, if they start investigating political party X, Y, Z, others will say, but why aren't you investigating this political party? What have you found in terms of that research?
Yes, absolutely. So that is a hot potato, really, because irrespective of the institution that is tasked with such a responsibility, there is bound to be pushback in some form. So, for example, there were talks of SARS potentially taking on the responsibility. Even if that were to be the case, we will still likely have a few issues. But we also need to remember that the Electoral Commission did not necessarily choose this particular responsibility. It was given to the IEC based on the legislation. And if, as an electoral management body, and the good job we've done in terms of managing elections, we do also need to recognize that the Party Funding Act is a different facets altogether, but they've also shown a commitment by capacitating this particular area under the leadership of Mr. Mahlangu. And I do think that over time, our capacity should the need arise, will be implemented, and there will be people available to help the Electoral Commission. And we also need to remember that we mustn't make this about institutions. At the end of the day, it's about ensuring that we manage this process as a country, irrespective of which institution it falls under. But at this very point, it does fall under the Electoral Commission. So what is key is to make sure that all the measures are in place, and engagement such as these and interacting with other countries will also help shape either whether policy or strategies that are used to implement Party Funding Acts in a fair and transparent way.
Dr. Mkhunu, thank you so much for those wonderful insights, of course, into your research, and we look forward to whatever you have in store for us. So, Nati also addresses a very hot, another hot potato, so to speak, and this is something that we've been covering closely as the SABC. Should the IEC be given more powers to police the Political Party Funding Act? And this is where the IEC is somewhat conflicted, as was Dr. Mkhunu had actually raised there. But also, I just want to highlight and alert our viewers that, the Political Party Funding Symposium comes at a time, where parliamentarians have actually introduced a threshold to actually increase the upper limits of the Political Party Funding Act. So it's from 15 million to 30 million, that's the limit, and of course from 100,000 to 200,000 rand. So of course we will be giving you more updates in this regard. Tomorrow we expect the Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana to actually address our delegates here. And of course from me as SABC News, it's back to you in studio.
All right, thank you so much, Natasha, for that update. And of course, drawing on a number of questions that are coming out of that symposium, essentially the Chief Electoral Officer Sy Mamabolo saying that a distinction should be drawn then between the IEC and Parliament in constructing the regulatory framework on political funding.